Good evening. My name's Sandy, and I've been given the unenvious task to talk about spirituality in 40 minutes. So, how does one do that? Well, when I was thinking about coming here tonight, I couldn't help but think of my mum. You know, when you go into my house back up in Edinburgh, you've got two Scots talking tonight, it's quite funny. When you go into my house up in Edinburgh, my mum loves fridge magnets. I don't know if anyone else's mums love fridge magnets. Maybe you are a mum that loves fridge magnets yourself, but my mum loves fridge magnets. And one of the fridge magnets says that religion's for people that don't want to go to hell, whereas spirituality is for people that have been to hell and don't want to go back. I would agree with that. Sometimes it does take going to hell to open up to want to explore spirituality. It certainly did for me. But I would like to suggest tonight that spirituality is much more about avoiding hell and much more about experiencing heaven on earth. You know, I don't know about you, but I was told growing up that I had to wait until I died to go to heaven. And something about that just didn't appeal to me. I didn't want to wait that long, you know. And so tonight I really want to talk about spirituality from a very down-to-earth experience that we can all have while still living on this planet and operating in our daily lives. Does that sound okay? Yes. A few years ago I had perhaps the best and worst day of my life, about 3.5 years ago. Because I woke up one morning and I realised that, you know, a few years prior to that morning, I'd set some pretty big goals with my friend. I remember being up in Blairgowrie visiting my friend, and one New Year's Day we set some pretty big goals. You know, I wanted to. We were just like, what shall we do? You know, let's set some pretty big goals. Shall we? Oh, let's appear in telly, and let's run retreats and international retreats. That sounds good. And let's have clinics fully booked and workshops, and let's get a publishing deal. Yeah, you know, I was so excited. Let's have a publishing deal with a mainstream publisher. You know, I was like 25 or 24 when it. Or so when I was making this. So it was like this lifetime goals, you know, we were setting goals for a lifetime. And I also that day explored more personal goals, like I wanted to live with the girl of my dreams, in the house of my dreams, driving the car of my dreams, you know, physical stuff, like stuff, you know, having more money than I could possibly want. That was on the list, you know. And a couple of years later I woke up one morning and I had the worst and best day of my life. It was the worst day of my life because I realised sitting in my bed, on the side of my bed that day, that I'd actually got all my goals. All my ticks had been ticked. That might sound very good. Whoopie-doo for you might think, but the reality was, I realised I wasn't happy yet. I'd achieved some pretty big goals in about 30 years quicker than I expected, and I wasn't happy yet. In fact, I was much less happy and more stressed than I'd ever been in my entire life. I remember walking around Edinburgh that day, and I'd completely lost a purpose. I'd lost hope, because what was the point in setting another big goal if all these pretty huge goals that I thought were like lifetime goals that eventually I'd be able to, like, you know, if I got that, I'll be happy. What was the point in setting another goal if actually it wasn't going to give me what I ultimately wanted? Because what do you ultimately want? It's the most important question we can ask ourselves, by far. Really, honestly, it's the most important question a human being can ask himself. So much so that, although it's not been that interactive so far when it comes to calling out, I'd like to actually find out what you want more than anything else. If like this was if this was a magic wand, yeah, Harry Potter's wand, you could come in here and give you his wand, and with that wand you could have any one wish. What would you ask for? What would that one thing be that you ask for? Apart from it, what would you ask for?
Happiness.
Happiness?
Good health.
Good health, yeah.
Inner peace.
Inner peace.
Love.
Live in harmony.
Love.
Live in harmony with the planet.
So we've got happiness, health, love, happiness, inner peace.
To make a difference.
To make a difference, yeah. And if you were making a difference, what would that give you?
Joy.
Joy. What else do you want?
A restful mind.
A restful mind. Because what would that give you? What do you want? Over here. Nothing. That's okay. What would that give you? Wonderful. That's the truth. How about here? What would you want? If you had that magic wand, you could have any one thing, what would you ask for?
My friend just said
Orgasm. Okay. So that can be it. How about this side of the room? What would you ask for if you could have one thing? World peace. Wonderful. Exactly. So mind, body, balance, alignment with your source and self. It's just, that's what I could hear from here. It's just beautiful. And so we've got happiness, we've got peace, we've got joy, we've got contentment, we've got love, we've got all these wonderful things. And when someone asked me that a few years ago, they said, "What do you want, Sandy, more than anything else? What do you want?" And I said, "I want peace." And they went, "Great." That was very, yeah, you want peace. He said, "So out of your average day, 24 hours, how much of your day is focused on making sure you get that goal?" Most of it. I had to be honest back then. My reality was I was kind of busy right now. I was kind of busy working, so at some point I could relax and experience what I wanted. But that was the problem. I was postponing my peace. The cool thing with happiness and peace and joy and contentment and love and all these wonderful things that really ultimately we want, yeah? Ultimately, the cool thing is it's our birthright. It's our most natural way of being. It actually takes effort, stress, and being out of balance to not be peaceful, to not be happy, to not experience joy, to not experience love. It takes effort to not experience our heart's greatest desire. It's the most wonderful news. Can anyone relate to that? It was the most amazing moment when someone said that, what had happened to me is I've become a human doing, and I'd forgotten that I was actually a human being. I was so busy doing, I had no time left to actually just be what I already was the entire time. Because what I thought is I'd been programmed that I had to do lots of things in order to be what I ultimately wanted. And unintentionally, I was completely postponing my peace. So tonight, I really want to talk a bit about how to reconnect with peace right now. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah? And so what I did is I didn't take that gentle knock that day we're walking around Edinburgh, like, there must be more to life than this. I tried to just ignore it. And what that led to was me having my own personal rock bottom wake-up call. What that looked like was me getting more frustrated with my life more and more. And what happened was I ended up having a really rocky time in my relationship, which led to the inevitable thing happening, which was her leaving. Her leaving along with the child I'd been raising, the house I was living in, the car I was driving, the pile of money we jointly created, and I basically ended up with absolutely nothing. I had my wonderful wake-up calls. Anyone had one of these in their lives yet? Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, they say when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Have you ever heard that phrase? Yeah? That happened in my life, and I'm sure it happens in your life all the time. For me, what it looked like was a friend of mine saying, "Have you heard of this form of meditation?" I was like, "No. But I've tried meditation. I can't do it. I don't like it. I can't stop my mind." I said, "I can't stop my mind." And they were like, "Don't worry, you don't have to stop your mind in order to experience peace." I was like, "What? You don't have to stop your mind to experience peace? But surely it's all, still your mind and stuff." I said, No. With this meditation, you don't have to still your mind at all. You can experience peace even with a million thoughts. I was like, "What? How is that possible?" And so I went along and learned the form of meditation. And what was fascinating was I saw in the eyes of the teachers that had been up there like a joy and a peace that I hadn't seen in many other people. And I was really curious by that point, so I went along to another course because you could repeat for free. And so I went along to the next one. I looked into the eyes of the teachers there, and they had the same kind of joy and peace. So I went to another course because you could repeat for free, and I'm a Scot, so I like to get value for money. And so I went along to the next course and the next course. Honestly, I kept going on to these courses, and the teachers at the front all had this same bloody look in their eye. It's just this kind of peace. It's like an okayness. I was like, I want some of that. I wanted it so much that it was, despite still being on the telly and things being really busy, I actually took a time out and I went off and meditated for 10 weeks on the island of Patmos in Greece. Sometimes up to 18 hours a day, I just sat there and meditated. And it was the most amazing thing. And then from there I went to the mountains of Mexico and meditated for another 14 weeks, day and night. And I came out the other end with a completely different relationship in mind, and that's what I really want to talk to you tonight, about how to change our relationship with our minds so that even if you're having thoughts, you can still experience peace simultaneously. Does that sound okay? Because it really fascinated me, you know, it's all about our relationship with our mind not having no mind or having no thoughts that is the real key to freedom. Because I don't know if this is the Scott and William Wallace or something, but I always wanted freedom. Has anyone else heard of this? You know? And so when someone said you want freedom, I was like, yeah, I'll have some freedom. I'll have some of that. And freedom is like an amazing thing. You know, people want freedom. Whether we're aware of it or not, freedom and enlightenment, they're kind of the same thing. And freedom also, another word for freedom is eternal peace, love, unconditional love, joy, happiness, you know, all the good stuff. If we've got freedom, we've got the other stuff. We've got enlightenment, we've got the peace. It's all kind of in the one kind of parcel. It's wonderful. It's all in one present, so to speak, but we'll come on to that later. And so, I completely forgotten where I was. Where was I?
Freedom.
Well, freedom, exactly. And so I said to someone, I said, I want some freedom. And they said to me, well, look at your life and what do you think needs to happen so you can experience freedom? And I gave them a big long list. I said, I've got to have this much money. I've got to have this type of relationship with a partner. I've got to have stability. You know, I've got to have financial freedom. I've also got to have freedom to do the job I want. Yes, I want to have the freedom to. Well, I also want to have the freedom as to choose to where I live. You know, I want to have freedom and not have to be able to walk across boundaries and borders. I want freedom. And they said, you know what, Sandy, your problem is that you're actually you're so far away from freedom you have no idea. Because what I hadn't realised is that there's kind of this spectrum, okay? And on one end of it's freedom, and the other end of it is control. So like if you've got like a spectrum, left to right or right to left, you've got control at this end, and you've got freedom at this end. Is that okay? Quite simple. He's warmed you guys up, anyway, you can handle much more mathematics than that. But we've got freedom at this end, and we've got control at this end. We've got a kind of line, this straight line in between. I was kind of around about here. I was trying to control pretty much everything in my life. I was trying to control my relationships, I was trying to control my money, trying to control where I live, trying to control everything. Because I'd be led to believe that if I had everything how I thought it should be, I'd be happy. And I'd finally be able to relax and enjoy some peace. Does that make sense, guys? And what I've discovered through the process of meditation and reconnecting with what I call my real self is that the more I move away from trying to control my life, the more freedom I ultimately get to experience. And it really is it really can be that simple. This is a simple move from controlling to the less you control, the more free you are. Because the more things have to be a certain way for you to be okay, the more we're kind of dependent on these things being a certain way for us to be okay. Does that make sense? Which makes our happiness, our peace, our love conditional. And the more conditions we have, like the longer list of the conditions we have, it's kind of more hoops the universe has to jump through every day in order to let us be happy. Do you know what I mean? The more tick boxes we have, the less opportunities every day we get to be peaceful. It's the most fascinating thing. And so by getting a razor and learning to rub out all these tick boxes so that whatever happens today, I'm alright. Yeah? I don't actually need that person to look at me in a certain way. I don't need that person to like me. I don't need that person to agree with me. You know, I don't need to live in that place I think I need to. I don't really have to have that much as much money as I think I might need to. You know? I don't have that job or whatever. The less things have to be a fixed way for me to be okay, the more free I actually am. Which, by the way, guys, is so much easier than trying to control everything. Oh my God, this causes so much stress and anxiety. Because when we're born, our parents or whoever is looking after us, our guardians, in their infinite love for us, want us to have the best life possible. That's what they want. They want us to have the best life possible. Anyone had kids in here? Hands up if you had kids. Yeah? Do you want your kids to have a good life? Absolutely, it's just natural. Our parents want us to have a good time. And so we start showing our kids what a good life looks like. It's just completely natural, and it comes from love. It comes from a really beautiful place. We start teaching our kids what how our bodies should be, and how our relationships should be, and the sort of house we should live in, and the sort of job that we should have, and the type of education that we should have. And we start gathering these tick boxes as we go through our life, you know, very innocently. Very innocently. The parents and our guardians or whoever, once we get past a certain age, we stop looking at them anyway. We start looking at media and friends and all that sort of stuff. And we start looking as to what a good life looks like. And we start learning what we should allow if it happens in our life, or what we should resist if it happens in our life. Do you know what I mean? If my life doesn't look like how I've been taught it should look, then I resist it. If it looks how I think it should, I love it. And we start thinking through unintentionally, that getting stuff must give me happiness, because when I don't get it, I feel bad. But the reality is, it's not the not getting it that makes you feel bad, it's the resistance not getting it that makes you feel bad, not the not getting it. Does that make sense? So it's all about whether we're controlling, or whether we're free, or whether we're resisting, or whether we're allowing. Do you know what I mean, guys? And so the more and more we meditate, the more and more we explore spirituality, and the more and more we explore and rest in our real self, what naturally happens is, we cultivate compassion within ourselves. We start being more gentle with ourselves. We start being more gentle with other people. We start being more gentle with how our life is looking. We stop resisting it. And through the act of non-resistance, what happens naturally is we naturally experience peace. It takes effort. It takes stress to resist life. Do you know what I mean? So if anyone in this room is ever experiencing, if you're experiencing a problem right now, or you're experiencing like any negative emotions, one of the best questions you can ask yourself, and it sounds very simple, be warned, spirituality has to be simple. Has to be simple. Anything else is a concept. So, what was the question? Resistance, right? One of the best questions you can ask yourself, if you're ever having a problem or experiencing any stress or negative emotion, is, right now, what in my life am I resisting? Right now, what in my life am I resisting? Because if there is a stress within you, or a negative emotion of anger, or sadness, or fear, or guilt, or grief, or hurt, or something, there's a chance there's a resistance in there somewhere. Does that make sense, guys? And the cool thing with this is that the minute we ask yourself a powerful question like, what in my life am I resisting? Suddenly we stop being a victim to what's happening out there, because it's nothing about that, it's about whether I'm resisting what's happening. It's not what's happening's problem, or it's not life's fault. You know what I mean? It's, am I resisting it or not? Am I allowing it or not? Now the cool thing is, just so you know, just so I can pre-help that question, what if something bad really is happening? Do you just allow it and become a walkover? No, not at all. Not at all. You don't have to become a walkover. There's a big difference between allowing and acceptance. If something's not acceptable to you, you can make a positive change. But you don't have to cause yourself unnecessary stress, anguish, and anger in the process in order to justify the change. You know, what I learned growing up is I had to have a tantrum in order to justify getting my own way or making a change. Do you know what I mean? That was for me. But I had to have a bit of a tantrum to justify making that positive change. But actually, you can make changes from a place of peace. The most wonderful thing with reconnecting with your real self is that you recognize that you're already complete. You're absolutely already whole. There's nothing wrong with you. The belief that there's something wrong with you is actually just a belief. And that's one of the things you let go of with a good form of meditation. I want you to imagine, guys, that I could reach in every one of your heads tonight, and if you take out the belief, even if it's not there anymore, you might have already evolved beyond this, but just pretend and play along with me. Imagine I could reach in and take out the belief there's something wrong. Maybe imagine if that just didn't exist in your mind anymore. The subtle belief there's something wrong. What's left? Peace. And there's no reason not to be experiencing joy either, is there? There's also no reason not to experience love either. There's no reason not to love, there's no reason not to experience joy. You just get to be you. And so one of the most amazing things I discovered along my own path was that I had this subtle belief that I hadn't seen before, that there's something wrong. And I encourage you to be willing to let go of that. If you might have noticed, oh yes, that might be a useful belief to let go of. It's a useful belief to let go of. Because actually there isn't. It's only the mind that tells us what's right and wrong, good, bad, better, worse, and all these sorts of things. But anyway, I want to come on to that later. And so, I only have a very limited amount of time with you, so I wanted to share with you some simple ways in order to reconnect with peace tonight. Is that okay? Yes. And it really boils down to where we put our attention. Where we put our attention is the absolute fundamental basics when it comes to how we experience more peace. Where we put our attention. And let me explain why. Because we feel what we focus on. And so we put our attention on what's changing and moving and temporary and out of our control, there can be a sense of angst. But if we put our attention on that which is still and peaceful and full and complete, we experience what we're putting our attention on. And so if we think about it, what do we tend to put our attention on a daily basis? Well, one of the things we don't put our attention on is our mind. It's kind of there, it's talking away, and it's that voice in our head that we think is us. That's one of the most common things we put our attention on. Now, there's a study done a few years ago that David loved this because it's a study and it's research. That study suggested that the average person has about 90 to 120,000 thoughts a day, based upon the activity going on in the brain activity. About 90 to 120,000 thoughts every day. It's quite a lot of thoughts, isn't it? Yeah? Does it seem reasonable to some people in the room? Yeah. Some other studies carried out in India at the University of Calcutta found that of these thoughts, based upon the stress responses in the body, that for some people up to 90% of their mind, their thoughts, could be having a negative impact on the body. It's a huge amount. Now that scared me, so even if we half that statistic to say 50%, based upon the first statistic of about 100,000 thoughts a day, that works out about 40 to 50,000 negative thoughts every day that we'd have to change if we're going to have purely positive thoughts. Okay? So who here's heard of positive thinking? Hands up, come on, play with me. Heard of positive thinking? Anyone mastered it yet? So it's like they've only had positive thoughts? Only. Like they've never had a negative thought for the last, say, week. Okay, you're human. If you've attempted positive thinking and not completely mastered it, be gentle on yourself. Because when I was sitting there for 18 hours a day doing my meditation, I noticed a few things about the mind, and I'm sure you might have found them too if you've been meditating. One of them is that thoughts are random. Thoughts are just coming and they're going. They appear for a moment out of nowhere, they're there for a moment apparently, and then they disappear again into nothingness. So they come from nowhere, they appear for a moment, and they disappear for a moment. I don't have any control over that thought coming, I don't have control what it is when it's there, and I don't have control when it disappears. It just seems to happen. Okay? I don't have control of the content of the thought, if it's a positive thought or a negative thought, it just kind of comes through, happens, and then disappears again. Did anyone notice that through meditation? Kind of thoughts just happen. Yeah? It's a really, really important one. Now we could play a game right now. In fact, let's do it. Let's do this game. For the next 20 seconds, I want us all to close our eyes, and we're going to count our thoughts. Okay? I just want you to count how many thoughts go through your mind. It could be a thought about this. It could be a thought about what you have to do later. It could be a thought about the person next to you, or whatever. Just whatever thought you're aware of. Give it a number 1, 2, 3, 4, and see how many you count in the next 30 seconds. Slowly open the eyes. Okay, now there's no competition here. It's not about being Zen-like and having less thoughts, and like if you've got less thoughts than your neighbour, you're more enlightened or anything like that. It's not about that. So I want a kind of a general straw poll. How many thoughts did you have?
8.
Brilliant. How about you? 3. And in the back row, how many did you have? 2? Wonderful. How about you over here? Anyone have any thoughts? 10? Brilliant. And you?
167.
167. He knows how to count things, that's why you don't have any. How many did you get? 3. Brilliant. So, if you played along, you all had the chance to close your eyes and count your thoughts, yeah? Really simple? Why I love that simple exercise so much is because if anyone that closes their eyes for a few seconds and counts their thoughts can have a life-changing experience. Because if you can count your thoughts, it means one very important thing. You are not your thoughts. For you to be able to count your thoughts means there must be the thought, object, and something aware of that thought able to count the thought. Does that make sense? How do we know you're not your thoughts? Well, because you were there the entire time. I opened my eyes and checked. You were there the whole time. But your thoughts came and went, didn't they? Does that make sense, guys? So you, the real you, has to be the permanent part of you. Has to be. Is that clear? So thoughts are temporary. They're part of the temporary realm, and you're not your thoughts. But this voice in our head can dictate our day. You know, if that's happy, we can feel happy. If that's angry at something, then we can feel angry. You know, it's depending on our relationship to that these thoughts impacts our peace that we experience. Is that clear, guys? Yeah. So we're not our thoughts. I could also say, "Hey, how are you feeling?" And you'd be able to go, "I'm feeling blah." And I could say, "Hey, how are you feeling?" And like anyone, if you went to a coffee shop with your friends, say, "How are you feeling?" And you could say, "Oh, today I'm feeling a bit, X or whatever." If you can tell someone how you're feeling, that also means that you're not your emotions. Has anyone here had an emotion today? Have you had an emotion today? Anyone? Hands up if you had an emotion today. I know you don't like me if you don't put your hands up, which is quite depressing. But hands up if you've had an emotion today. Okay. Hands up if you've had more than one emotion today. Okay, you're human. Okay. Now the good news is you were here the entire day. You were the permanent you, but you had emotions coming and going. Alright? This is really, really important. Because if someone thinks to their emotions and thinks to their thoughts, they can experience an emotional roller coaster every day. As they jump from thought to thought, emotion to emotion, and just think where our attention is. It's on stuff that's changing, temporary, and not necessarily completely under our control. I know we should all be going for emotional mastery, but I would actually suggest that there's absolutely nothing wrong with your emotions. You do not have to fix your emotions to be at peace. All you need to do is to fix your relationship with your emotions, and peace can be yours. It's much quicker, much easier, and you actually have a chance of doing it in this lifetime. Sound good? Hey. Other things we tend to put our attention on these days is our body. You know, when I was growing up, anytime my mum had a bad day, it was because her body wasn't the right shape or size. You know? Oh, I'm just a size 12 again. Ever since I had the kids, so that was my fault too, but anyway. So, ever since I had a size 12 again, you know, I learned, like, my body had to be a certain way for me to be okay. So when I grew up and I got into my teenage years, I found myself feeling a bit rubbish. So I thought, oh, it's my body. My body's not right. So I found myself in the gym, age 15, 16, pumping iron. Get my body pumped up. Then I get to a point, yeah? I know it's hard to imagine now, but so I get my body pumped up, and then what happens? My body's the right shape, but it's not the right colour. So I'm in the sunbeds, changing the colour of my body, yeah? Because I'm trying to find myself, and I think my body. So I've got it to be loved and lovable. I have to have the right type of body. And so then what happens? I've got the body and I've got the colour, but now it's not got the right clothes. So I'm putting myself into debt, trying to buy clothes to be something. But what I hadn't realised is that I was already looking for myself outside myself. That continued though, because then I went and tried to get a job, and I wanted to be a consultant. So I could walk into a party and go, hi, management consultant, thank you very much. Has anyone you've ever been to a party where someone's introduced themselves by their job title? Hi, architect. I have no idea who you are yet, but thanks for telling me what you did today. I have no idea. And so, but we start looking for ourselves in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our body. Don't find ourselves there. So we naturally start looking for ourselves outside ourselves. We start looking for this stability, this peace, this happiness outside ourselves. So we start looking for ourselves in our career. To be a successful person, you have to have a lot of money. For me, that was me. I had to have a lot of money to feel personal value. My self-worth went up and down with my bank balance. I had to have someone love me. And so I would say to them, hey, I love you. Maybe that's why I didn't get it back. But anyway, I didn't. But when I said, well, I was actually saying, I love you, had become a question. Was I love you? Because really what I was wanting to hear it back. I was like, I love you. And if I didn't hear it back in like probably less than 5 seconds, what's something wrong? Are we okay? Are you okay? Yeah? In fact, that's a long story. But anyway, so I started looking at myself in my relationships. Doesn't work. In fact, it's even worse because I get really clingy and needy. Anyway, long story. So I don't find myself in my thoughts, don't find myself in my emotions, don't find myself in my body, don't find myself in my job, don't find myself in my relationships, don't find myself in my money, don't find myself in my home. You know, I go around and see my mum. She's lovely, by the way. She's learned to meditate. But before then, I'd go and visit her, and I'd be like, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm okay." I said, "What is it?" She's like, "Well, we really need a new bathroom." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I thought it was something bad. You know, she was like, wasn't happy. Then the next time I'd go back and I'd be like, "Wow, Mum, look at your bathroom. It's amazing." She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" She's like, "Well, we need a new carpet." I'm like, "Oh God." And so, like, she's just trying to make her house exactly how she thinks it used to be, because she's the sort of person that lives in this house, you know. And it's costing her a fortune. And so, what I hadn't realised in my own life was I was constantly looking for myself outside myself. Yeah, I was looking for peace and happiness in the outside world. And someone came along to me one day and said, "You know what? Where you put your attention matters. If you want to experience peace, because you are already peaceful." I'm like, "No, I'm not." No, you really are already peaceful. The real you is already peaceful. But what you haven't been doing is putting any attention on the part of you that is already peaceful. And so that's why you've not been experiencing peace. I'm like, sorry, are you trying to tell me that experiencing my heart's greatest desire, peace, happiness, love, joy, contentment, comes from a simple shift in where I put my attention? Seriously? And they were like, yes. And so I'd like to share tonight what this little shift in attention is. Is that okay, guys? so that we can get really clear on what we're trying to do. And it's so simple. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a game. And this is called the content context game. Okay? It's more fun than it sounds, right? And so I want us to imagine that, we can put our attention on something in this room. Is that right? And so where we put our attention in this room matters when it comes to experiencing our peace and happiness and joy and love and contentment. And so we've got content on this side and the context on this side. Is that all right, guys? And so on this side, we're going to start filling in these columns. So I don't have a whiteboard, so I'm trying to do it visually. And so in this room, you've got the seat and me and you and your hat. Lovely hat. You've got the seats, you've got your scarves, you've got the pillars, because it's called the pillar room, you've got the lights. All that, the technical term for that is stuff. Okay? So stuff is the content of the room. That stuff fits in the room because there's the context of space. Yeah? There's space around this seat. There's space around me. There's space in this room. And all that space allows the stuff to fit in it. You with me so far? Okay. And the space is constant, but the stuff comes and goes. Like these seats will always be packed up and taken out later on. Your guys are going to come and go. But the space is permanent. It's going to be here the entire time. Even when the building goes, the space will still be here. Okay? You've also got the sounds of my voice, the wonderful sounds of Tim, the wonderful sounds of you laughing occasionally, the wonderful sounds of... Someone make a sound. Thank you. We've got these sounds that are going, and these sounds occur within the context of silence. Silence. Now, I used to think that it was an either or. There's either sound or silence. But actually, for us to hear anything, there has to be the constant context of silence. So there's like this context of silence and this sound that happens within it. What I found earlier listening to Tim was I was drawn with the sound into the silence. It was the most wonderful experience. So we've got this context of sound that's permanent and the content of silence. The content of sound that is. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So we've got, so far we've got the content and context. We've got, in the content column, we've got stuff and sound, and we've got space and silence. Yeah? We've also got movement. I'm moving around, and you're moving your hand to fix your behind your ear, and someone move over, please. You're just too still. Thank you very much. So you're moving over there, and it's like moving in the front row. Thank you very much. I can always rely on you. And that movement exists within the context of stillness. Absolutely. So what we discover really quickly is we've got two kind of ultimately two things we can put our attention on. We've got the content of our lives and we've got the context of it and this moment. So we've got the sound, the stuff, the sound, the movement, we've got still silent space. And the $1 million question is, when it comes to you experiencing your heart's greatest desire now, because you can only experience it now, is where do we tend to put most of our attention most of the day? Now I'm talking to the converted maybe. But most people I ask that to, most of their attention is kind of over here. You know? They're most of their attention on the movement of their mind, movement of their emotions, the sounds, stuff, belongings, things to do. It's kind of over here. It's in movement, and the mind's movement and emotional movement. It's kind of over here, you know? And there's not much attention really left for the still silent space. And I kid you not, guys, hand on heart, the path to your peace, and in my opinion, the journey of spirituality, if there is such a journey, is from here to here. Now the good news is that your real self is already here. It's just your attention over here. So you are already this, and so the journey home is to return home to what you already are. Isn't that wonderful? You are you. You can't not be. Your real self has to be really near. It's actually in this room, believe it or not. Yeah? It's not in the future. It's not if you had a different past. It's right here, right now. And it's just a little shift of where you put your attention is all that's required for you to experience your heart's greatest desire. Isn't that amazing? Anyone really pissed off at me because it's too simple? I'm sorry. But if you listen to any sage or any spiritual master who's been teaching forever, they've all been saying the same thing. Even one of the most recent sages on the planet, or one of the most enlightened dudes on the planet, Eckhart Tolle. Heard of him? Yes. One of his books was called Stillness Speaks. I think there was a clue there. Yeah? If you talk to him, he's always talking about, hey, there's this silence. It's here right now. Just put your attention back on it, you know? It's reconnecting with the present moment and reconnecting with your real self is absolutely fundamental. One of the biggest things I learned when I was doing these meditations, and I continue to discover through meditation now, is that there is no such thing as a present moment thought. There's no such thing as a present moment thought. You can't think yourself into the present moment. If we put the mind and the moment into this equation I talked about earlier, which side would you say the mind shows up on? Is the mind on the content side or the context? The content. When I say mind, I'm talking about thoughts and emotions and stuff. Which side are we on? I feel like Bruce Forsyth. Over here, higher! Yeah, over here, yeah? Exactly. So the mind exists over here. The mind is movement. The mind is thoughts. The mind is the content of our minds. It's the stuff that's going through our awareness. I'm not talking about consciousness and awareness. That's something over here. That's the context of it. So it's a bit like where we're looking up at the sky and it's a clear, clear day. Have you ever, I know it's been a while probably, but you know these blue sky days, it's just blue sky. Oh, just blue sky. And then a bird flies across our field of vision and we take our attention from the infinite sky, we put all our attention on the bird just flying across our field of vision. And that's kind of what happens in our mind. Our thoughts and emotions happen and occur right now within a constant context of still, silent space, a peace. Isn't that amazing? But what happens is we put all our attention on what we're aware of, and we leave no attention for what's actually aware of what we're aware of. Does that make sense, guys? We put all our attention on the objective world, and we leave no attention for our own being, our own presence. The presence of peace that exists right now, always. And so when we get present, we have to let go of the mind, because there's no such thing as a present moment thought. So the moment's occurring. Let's pretend it is happening linearly from left to right. Is that left to right? Yes. So it's occurring left to right. And for the mind to talk about the moment has to have just happened for the mind to talk about it. Do you know what I mean? For the mind to be able to accurately talk about what's happening, the moment has to have just happened for the mind to talk about it. And so there's no such thing as a present moment thought. And so in order for us to rest into the present moment, it's about letting go of the mind and surrendering to this present moment. I have this picture on my wall in my house, and it's of a person falling backwards through space towards the earth, and they're just arms open falling backwards. And that really is my symbol and image of surrender, of freedom, of enlightenment, because it really does feel like free falling. To be completely peaceful right now is to let go of anything you think you know, anything you think is going to make this moment any better, just completely rest into this present moment, holding nothing. To be like a child, completely innocent, fresh. Totally emptying your cup so that you can let whatever has to happen right now flow through you. How amazing is that? To experience emptiness. But we already have that. We don't have to clear the mind. It's about putting our attention away from the content of the mind onto the context of the mind. Away from the content of the moment into the context of the moment. And that simple shift in where we put our attention brings us back to the peace that's always present. Right here, right now. Very nice, eh? What time are we at? Is that?
Just about time, yeah.
Thank you. Any questions or anything you want to say or ask? Everyone just kind of gone into that space right now? Well, we're going to be around afterwards if you have any questions. So thank you so much for listening to me tonight, and thank you so much for coming along and supporting this wonderful cause. And it's been an honour to be able to have a chat with you tonight. Thank you.